She walked into the audition room wearing an old, faded dress and shoes that had clearly seen better days. Her hair was loosely tied back, and her eyes held a quiet nervousness. The room was filled with polished, confident singers, some of them already sharing smug glances, trying not to laugh. To them, she didn't look like competition. She looked like someone who had wandered in by mistake. A few of the contestants whispered under their breath. One even chuckled. The judges looked up, clearly unsure of what to expect. After all, this was a big stage, and the woman standing in front of them looked more like a humble mother from a small town than a rising star. But what no one knew was that behind that quiet smile and simple appearance was a voice that would stop the world in its tracks. She took a deep breath. The room was silent now, though still filled with doubt. Cameras rolled. The judges leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed, waiting for something they didn't think would ever come. But the moment she opened her mouth, everything changed. One note, that's all it took. The smug looks disappeared. Jaws dropped. Even the judges sat forward, stunned. It wasn't just good. It was powerful, raw, and filled with emotion you couldn't fake. The laughter in the room, gone, replaced by silence, awe, and something else, respect. So who was this woman? Where did that voice come from? And why had she waited so long to share it with the world? Stay with us as we uncover the story behind this unforgettable audition, the moment one simple woman turned the music world on its head. Her name was Maria. No big following, no flashy online videos, just a woman who loved to sing while cooking dinner or rocking her baby to sleep. She had spent most of her life in a small village, helping her parents run a local grocery store and raising her 2 children. Music, for her, had always been a quiet companion, something private, something personal. But after years of putting everyone else first, she finally took a chance and traveled to the city for the audition. What no one in that room knew was that Maria had been singing since she was a child. Her grandmother, who passed away when Maria was a teenager, used to say her voice could calm a storm. But life, as it often does, got in the way. Bills had to be paid. Kids needed school supplies. Dreams had to be folded up and tucked away for later, if later ever came. So why now? Why this audition? Maria had seen a flyer at the train station while helping a neighbor carry groceries. National Talent Search, open auditions. Something about it pulled at her. Maybe it was the way her daughter had recently asked, "Mama, what did you want to be before you became just a mom?" Or maybe it was the quiet ache inside her that had grown louder with each passing year. Backstage, just before she went on, Maria could hear the other singers warming up. Perfect vocals, expensive clothes, stylists fussing over hair and makeup. She had no team, no coach, just a plastic folder holding the lyrics she'd memorized 1,000 times over. She had no idea if she'd even make it past the first round. But what happened after her first note, no one could have predicted. As the final note faded into the room, there was a long silence. One of those moments where time feels like it stops. The judges, known for their tough critiques and cold stares, exchanged glances, but they said nothing. Maria stood there, hands slightly shaking, unsure whether the silence meant disaster or something else entirely. From the side of the stage, the same singers who had laughed before were now whispering again. But this time, it wasn't jokes. It was disbelief, confusion, maybe even fear. Behind the scenes, producers stared at the monitor, caught off guard. One of them quietly asked, "Where did she come from?" Another just shrugged. There was no flashy backstory in her application, no sub-story prepared, just a name, an age, and a small note written in neat handwriting. "I sing from the heart." But not everyone was impressed. One contestant in particular, a well-known local performer named Jenna, wasn't happy. She had trained for years, spent money on vocal coaches, styling, PR. This stage was supposed to be her stepping stone to fame. And now this unknown woman in second-hand shoes had stolen the spotlight without even trying. The resentment grew quietly but quickly. Meanwhile, Maria sat in the waiting room after her performance, surrounded by the same crowd that had once ignored her. Some kept glancing her way. A few smiled. Most didn't say a word. Her phone buzzed. It was her daughter, texting, "How did it go, Mama?" Maria smiled softly but didn't reply yet. She wasn't sure what to say. She didn't know what came next. The judges hadn't given any feedback. No one called her name for the next round. She'd left them speechless. But was that enough? Or had she just stepped into something bigger than she ever imagined? The room was buzzing with whispers now. Even though Maria had only sung once, her performance had already started spreading through the building like wildfire. A few crew members were replaying her clip on their phones, shaking their heads in disbelief. One of the judges, still silent, sat reviewing her score sheet, tapping a pen against the table. Something about Maria's voice had unsettled everyone, not because it was bad, but because it was real. It had cut through the noise, and that made people uncomfortable. Backstage, Jenna paced in circles. She performed earlier that day and thought she had done well, until Maria. Now, all the attention was shifting. One producer was even heard saying, "This could go viral." Jenna's jaw clenched at that. It wasn't supposed to be Maria's moment. Not after all the work she herself had put in. So she made a call. To someone she knew in production. "Just reminding you," she said calmly, "there's a certain standard we're all expected to meet. Let's not get carried away." Maria still hadn't been called back. Every second felt like a lifetime. Other singers were moving on to the next stage. One by one, names were announced, but hers wasn't among them. She started to wonder if the silence after her song had meant rejection. She glanced down at her folder, then at the door. Should she leave? Was she just fooling herself? But just as she stood up, one of the assistant producers walked over, holding a list. He paused when he saw her. "Maria?" he said, unsure. "Can you wait here a moment? The judges want to speak with you privately." The room froze. Everyone turned to look. Maria nodded slowly, heart pounding. What did they want? Was it good, or something else entirely? Maria followed the assistant producer down a narrow hallway, her footsteps echoing off the walls. Her palms were damp, and her mind raced with questions. Why did the judges want to speak with her privately? Was there a problem with her audition? As they reached a small side room, the assistant paused and gave her a half smile before opening the door. Inside were the three judges, no cameras, no lights, just them and a few pages on the table. One of the judges, the harshest of the panel known for rarely showing emotion, looked up and said, "Sit down, Maria." She nodded, slowly lowering herself into the chair. The judge glanced at the others before continuing. "We need to talk about your audition." Maria's heart dropped. "We've never had a reaction like that," the judge said. "Your voice, it's undeniable." But he paused and the room tensed. "There's a concern. A contestant filed a formal complaint, said your audition might have breached the rules." Maria blinked. "What? What rules?" Another judge leaned forward. "They claimed you had professional coaching or prior performance experience you didn't disclose." Maria shook her head in disbelief. "That's not true," she whispered. "I've never had a lesson. I just sing." Backstage, the news of a rule breach spread quickly. Whispers turned into full-on rumors. Jenna, watching from across the room, hid a small smirk. Her plan was working. The judges exchanged quiet glances. "We're not saying you're disqualified," one of them said, "but we need to review everything before moving forward." Maria sat frozen. What was supposed to be her one chance at a dream was now slipping through her fingers. And as she sat in that room, trying to hold herself together, one thing became painfully clear. This audition wasn't just about talent anymore. It was about survival. Maria sat in silence as the judges stepped out to discuss the complaint. Her fingers trembled on her lap, but she kept her head high. Every part of her wanted to walk away, to avoid the spotlight that now felt more like a target. But something deep inside told her to stay. She had come too far to let fear, or someone else's jealousy, take this moment from her. After what felt like hours, the door opened. The lead judge stepped back in, holding a folder. He looked serious, but his eyes had softened. "Maria," he said, "we've reviewed the complaint. We spoke to the production team, and it's clear you broke no rules." Maria let out a shaky breath as her shoulders dropped. "We owe you an apology," he continued. "You're not only eligible, you're going straight to the finals." The assistant producer clapped softly. Maria covered her mouth, fighting back tears. But before the joy could settle, he added, "There's something else you should know." He placed a phone on the table and tapped the screen. A video began to play. It was Maria's audition. Except this time, it had a banner at the bottom. Unseen talent. The audition that shocked the judges. The video had already been posted by someone inside the production team. It was spreading fast. Within hours, it had passed 1 million views. "We didn't approve this leak," the judge said, "but it's real, and the world's already falling in love with your voice." Maria was speechless. Backstage, Jenna watched the views climb with clenched fists. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. And as Maria walked out of that room, tears in her eyes, the crowd of contestants turned to look. But this time, no one laughed. No one whispered. They just watched as a star was born. In the days that followed, Maria's life changed almost overnight. The audition video continued to spread across the internet, gaining millions of views and thousands of comments. People from around the world were moved by her voice, but even more by her story. The simple woman who silenced the stage, some called her. Others wrote things like, "She sings like she's lived every word." Music blogs picked it up, radio stations replayed her clip, and producers started reaching out. Maria didn't let it go to her head. She still took the train back home, still helped her kids with homework, still cooked dinner just like always. But something inside her had shifted. For the first time, she felt seen. Not for how she looked, not for how she dressed, but for what she carried in her heart. Jenna quietly faded from the spotlight. After the complaint was revealed as false, her reputation took a hit. She didn't return for the finals. As for the show itself, Maria sang in the grand finale with even more emotion than before. She didn't win the top prize, but she won something far greater, an invitation from a respected label and an audience that truly listened. When a reporter later asked her what kept her going, Maria smiled and said, "I didn't come to impress. I came because I owed it to myself, to the little girl who used to sing in the kitchen and believed one day someone might listen." Her story reminds us that real talent doesn't need glitter or fame. It needs courage. And sometimes, when the world underestimates someone, that's when the magic happens. Because in a room full of voices, one simple woman sang, and everyone finally heard.